All right, well, welcome to our third in a series of how to use the Kansas State Budget Generator. In this section, we'll be talking about how to create a new budget from scratch. If you haven't already watched the general overview and how to make changes to a budget, I would encourage you to watch those two segments before you watch this segment. I should also remind everyone that this budget generator funding for this tool was provided by the USDA NIFA Organic Transition Grant. All right, well, let's go to the budget generator and take a look about how you would actually start doing a new budget. All right, well, here's our budgeting tool, and you can see we have all of our current set of budgets already in here, and we want to, instead of modifying one, now we actually want to do the process from scratch. Well, the way you do that is you go to this button here that says add a budget, click on that, and then it will basically give you the ability to start keying in some of the missing information on this basic tab where you can go and start making changes here. All right, so we need to give it a title, so I will just call it Gregg's Test Budget. I currently have the program set up just to put an average yield for the subtitle, but again, you could put something in here you want to, and just call this, just call it Test Yields. And then there's also a budgeting date that you can change here, which kind of defaults to November 1st, but again, you can put whatever you want there. Now, the number is a little bit important because it kind of helps show where the budgets actually appear in the list. So let me go ahead and key a new number in for that, and let's just kind of see what we have here for other numbers. I'll go ahead and key something in, maybe like at the 650 range. And currently, I don't have anything above 1,000, but you could go beyond that too if you want to. So now this very top thing, it will fill in once this record's actually committed. I think if I go to come back on that page, well, actually, let me select it here, and I can get it changed here. Okay, there's our first budget. And I said I named this number 650. So now we'll go back here and you can see this kind of fill back in. It kind of a process of getting the budget committed to memory before it will kind of show up on this top line. Now the reason why the number is a little bit important because you can actually, I didn't mention this in any of the other videos, but you can actually use these two spots here to limit how many budgets actually show up in this list. You can see right now it's almost becoming a little unwieldy with the number of budgets I have right now. So if you want to use this as your main thing as opposed to maybe doing a search, you can actually kind of limit your range. And I kind of built this with the idea that this could actually become like a national budgeting tool, when in which case there might be a lot more budgets. But the way you would do that then, these two buttons right here, this one, this cell, and this cell over here, you can limit your range of the numbers that show up. Right now it's set to show any budgets that are numbered from 1 up to 1,000, which is basically all the budgets we currently have in here. But we know this is budget 650, so we could actually say something like this. Let's set it to only show budgets from 600 to 700 like that. And now when we click on this button that actually will bring down this drop-down menu, now you can see it limits our budgets only to those 4 budgets that actually fit that within that description range here. So the idea could be, we could have budgets for different states or different crops or different regions by the numbering system, and you can make this drop-down menu much easier to work with than trying to do the whole unwieldy thing I had before. So anyway, so this is my basic info. The title will be the very first thing at the top of the header page, and this will be right below it. And the acres and such are kind of guide how the budget is going to be developed. You may not always want to do a budget on a per acre basis, although I think all the crops you would, but some other things potentially you could actually do a budget like on a per bushel basis too. All right, so we can go ahead and fill some other information in that will show up on the header lines. Again, 221, the budgeting region. So let's just do one for Southeast Kansas. And again, we'll pick a machinery region that would show up, and it would help to define where you pull custom rates from. That's really the only place where that's used from. And then let's go ahead and maybe do a wheat budget. Okay, so we'll do winter wheat grain. Now the reason why this particular blank here is important because this is the spot where the program looks to see when it looks at how many pounds of fertilizer it needs for the different nutrients. It kind of bases that on the crop you have chosen here. And then we also have a kind of a table that kind of modifies this to some degree. But this is kind of recognized standards for the amount of those nutrients, N, P, and K, that this particular crop will pull off out of the ground here. So we're basing our fertilizer requirements on that. And as I said in one of the earlier videos about this, we normally want to leave the labor multiplier probably at 1.2, although I think the rules of thumb are basically anywhere from 1.1 to 1.2, but it definitely needs to be above 1 because it takes more than one labor hour for every tractor hour that we have. And then normally we're going to use intermediate rates for the machinery because that's more of a longer term investment, whereas the this budget interest rate, that is what is used for the interest that's charged to the variable crop expenses. So we use the short-term rate for that because those are typically 6 months long. Put whoever's writing the budget in there for that, and then the fuel prices, again, kind of default to those values, but again, you can put whatever you want to. Let's just go ahead and maybe put in 2 for that. I should warn you though, if you change the fuel price here, it will also show up as being changed in other budgets too. So like if I would go to that budget there. Now I effectively have changed my diesel price for all the budgets, so be careful how you actually go about doing that. So in that case, I just go ahead and leave it at 1.75 because I don't really want to mess up my other budgets necessarily. And now, okay, we got the basic things that kind of define the rest of the budgets, the header lines, and some of the things that are going to drive some of the other costs. Now we can go ahead and pick an output that we're going to produce. So again, we said this was wheat, so we'll go ahead and select wheat here. And this is for Southeast Kansas. So we will go ahead and select that. Now again, here's where you may want to make one of the changes. So again, we have a kind of default value based on what we have looked at historical yields and which way they're trending, and we've determined that to be 48 bushel per acre. But let's just go ahead and say, well, I got some better soils, so I think I can get about 55 bushel per acre. And let's say that we don't necessarily like the price, so we will go ahead and change the price maybe to 560. And that's what we think is going to happen here. So again, the amount calculates from the combination of quantity sold and price. Now, this will work just fine. It'll show up as the correct budget. And the thing to remember here on this page is, even though I changed the price here, this is only for this particular budget. It doesn't change all the other budgets, unlike some things here. So whatever change here is only for this budget. In fact, if you would go back and reselect wheat for Southeast Kansas again, you see it goes back and changes it back to what the defaults value were. So we'll go ahead and change it what we thought was going to be. And we will go forward like that. Now we have our output in there. Now we're ready to move to the input sections. And we can go ahead and start putting some inputs. So let's go ahead and start putting some fertilizer in, because we know we need fertilizer. And in fact, the tool here shows us what we need to have for the NPMK requirements. And that's based on the crop I picked back over on this particular page here. It's based on what I chose right there. So it's saying based on that crop, this is how much NPMK we need if we are going to have a yield of 55 bushels per acre. Well, so this little calculator, it doesn't really do anything with the budget, but it does help you define how much of those nutrients or fertilizers you actually need to add. So let's just say we know we need some phosphorus requirement, the P, so let's go ahead and use some MAP to get that. And you can see we need about 51 pounds of MAP to meet our phosphorus requirement. So go ahead and select fertilizer, and we will say MAP, and then we're going to convert this. Now this is given in tons, so we want to convert it into pounds. So we're going to move to pounds. And to meet the phosphorus requirement, we're going to need 51 pounds. And notice here as we do this now, that takes care of our phosphorus. We're also going to need some potassium. So again, let's go back and add some potassium here. potash. And again, we want to put this from tons into pounds as well, and it says we're going to need about 27 pounds of potash to meet our K requirement. All right, so now you see the rest thing we need is we need to get some more nitrogen. So let's just say we'll go ahead and maybe we'll add some urea in the spring to cover that. All right, so right now we only have 5 pounds of nitrogen on there, so we're going to need about 203 pounds of nitrogen. Now there is one little bugaboo in the program that doesn't always calculate these things correctly. So and the way to get around that is just go ahead and reselect the conversion thing, and sometimes it... Okay, I think we're okay now. All right, so we need about 203 pounds of urea, and that will give me my amount of N that I need to meet my NP and K requirements. Okay, so now we're good for fertilizer. We're applying enough MAP and potash and urea to get us this 99 pounds of N, 26 or 27 pounds of P, and about 16 pounds of K. So that's how that little calculator there can come in handy. It saves you having to kind of do a trial and error or do some guessing to figure out the exact amounts that you have. So this doesn't really come into the budget, but it does help you figure out the quantities of NP and K, a specific fertilizer you need to actually meet our requirements. And if you want to, you can actually put these in subcategories. Again, it's not a requirement. If you don't have a subcategory, we'll kind of group everything into one general overall category, but if you want to specify one, you can. So I'm not going to specify anything for the fertilizers. And then let's just go ahead and add some seed. I'm just going to kind of do a quick budget here. So we need some wheat seed. Again, this is already in pounds, so I'm not sure what the seeding requirements for wheat are. Again, I'm just guessing at the amount here. So let's say we need 30 pounds of seed per acre, and that'll give us the seed cost. And if you just want to focus on one particular item here, let's just look at, you just want to look at the seeds, you can basically select that category and then do a filter, click on the filter button, and then that will only show the seed requirements and how much it's going to be here. All right, so let's just kind of stop with those inputs. Again, you may have more things going into that as well, but my little play budget, that's all I'm going to have. Now let's move over to the machinery side. All right, so as I said, you can either do this as custom rates, whereas let's just go ahead and do the planting as a custom operation. And again, you can either use the Iowa custom rates or the Kansas custom rates. And you can see Kansas, and the reason why there's nothing showing up under Kansas is because the Kansas ones are actually broken into either no extra operation or with fertilizer or chemical application. So if you actually want to use the actual planting with no extra operation, that's where the Kansas ones are going to be. And here they are here. So small grain drilling, I believe, is what we would want to have. And let's just say we're doing a minimum or no-till. And you can see what the cost is. That's $15 per acre. And we're good to go. Now down here, let's go ahead and do the harvesting as our own machine. So we'll hit harvesting here. Again, these implement kinds are really to help reduce the size of the drop downs when you get to this actual implement thing. So by saying we're doing planting, you can see reduce our list of available custom operations down quite a bit. The same thing with the harvesting thing here too. So there's really a whole bunch of rows that make up the own machinery part of the database, and by harvesting I reduce that number greatly because I'm just picking from a subset of the database. So I picked harvesting. I picked an implement type. So again, there's always an implement matched up with the power unit. So in the case of harvesters and combines, it's going to be a header matched up with a certain size combine. So we know we're going to use a header size for wheat or sorghum. And then it'll give us the option for what size of header we actually have. So we have three choices here, either 22 to 30 foot ridge header, We'll just go ahead and say we have a 25-foot header. And then you notice here that's automatically, then when I pick the header size, it automatically matches us up with the combine, the appropriate size combine, 300 to 350 horsepower. Now, if you want to override that, let's say you had a smaller or bigger combine for that same size header, you could manually change that as well. Again, that won't mess up anything. That will only be unique to this particular budget here. So you're free to change that here as well here as you want. But again, remember, if you go back and reselect the header, then it will go back and change that back to the default here. So be careful if you go back and readjust a budget, because if you have switched things off to the default, it'll go back to the default if you make a change somewhere else within this particular row. And if there was any extra labor needed, it would automatically pop up here too. You may or may not have that. We're saying that typically with running a combine, you probably wouldn't have any extra labor, but you could add some here if you wanted to. And again, all the cost per acre for everything, for the labor, fuel, repair, and fixed cost are broken out here, and you see you get a total cost per acre then. And let's just go ahead and I've been doing a lot of things with the combine. Let me go ahead and show you maybe a tillage operation. So let's say you want to run maybe a field cultivator across your field before you actually run the drill across. So you can see you have different types of field cultivators, and we'll just look at a folding field cultivator. The next step would be to pick a size, and let's just say you have maybe a 42-foot size field cultivator, and then you can see it matches that with an appropriate size tractor for that. So again, you can change that if you want to, if you have a different size tractor, but that's kind of the default that we're using for that. All right, so now let's say that's enough for the custom operations and own machinery. Again, we'll add, if there is irrigation, we'll add that as a separate budget, a special irrigation budget. And now the next step is, and this is kind of an important one if you actually want to get anything to print, is you need to actually specify the budget that we're printing. So this was budget item number 650. So at the minimum, you want to make sure you click on that. And this is the budget we were working on. This tells us that's actually what we want to print here. So don't forget to do this step. Now we're ready to go ahead and do run reports. We can come over here. We can print maybe the detailed summary of income and expenses by clicking this button, and we come up to this particular page that has all the nitty-gritty little detail on here. And if you want to go back to where we were before, remember, just drag your mouse up to the top, and as you get toward the top, this button here will unhide that says return to budget page. Click on that, and now we're back to our basic budget. So that's pretty much how the process of how you go about building a crop budget. That'll be the end of this particular instructional video.